people are getting used to the fact that the hype is not as hypey as it was. In other words, people are understanding that, yeah, has a real significant impact on almost everything that we're doing. So anytime you have a large amount of data and a large number of transactions, artificial intelligence, machine learning can help out a lot. And we're just coming to grips with what does that mean? How can it be used? Where is it used best? So when I say I'm seeing more of the same, what I'm seeing is people being more comfortable with the idea. They're seeing more of it mentioned, and they are interacting with it more than they are aware of, really. And every time you pick up your phone, there's a lot of machine learning going on in there. But for marketing people, we're seeing more case studies. We're seeing more people come forward saying, yes, we've been using it for email. Yes, we've been using it for advertising. Yes, we've been using it for dynamic content on our websites, and it is having an impact. We're still pretty much solidly in the world of experimentation, but all of the results are showing that we're heading in the right direction.
I opened my physical mailbox today, and we have Valpak coupons in Omaha. And one of them is for KFAB, our AM news radio station, and it simply says, Alexa, play KFAB. Connect the dots for us. Why would a radio station be putting that out through direct mail?
It's called marketing, and it's fabulous. It is any way you can get the attention of your target audience. I don't know about you, but I've received a lot less junk mail in the last 5 years than in the previous 55 years. And that means that when something shows up that is vaguely interesting, it gets my attention. So that's the first dot, is direct mail is a way of getting somebody's attention. Now, why does a radio station use direct mail to get your attention? To direct you toward a voice-activated device, because that is now one of their channels. They're not just over the air, they're also available through your Google or Amazon or whatever device. And what's interesting is that I can ask Alexa to play that radio station anywhere in the world, and so they're going to get a bigger audience for that. The final dot is that voice is becoming more and more acceptable as a means of communication, as a means of interface with a computer system. So we're being taught that it's not just typing and it's not just clicking or tapping. We can actually talk to the systems now, and we're getting comfortable with that, which, final dot, creates a huge headache for people trying to sell products, because now I'm going to say, I won't use her name. I will say, Amazon, order me some Kleenex. And Amazon will send me a box of Amazon tissues. It's like, no, I want Kleenex. So how does a marketer get their product put forward on a voice device is one of the many interesting problems we'll be dealing with.
Was it Apple and Siri that really normalized voice to allow all this to happen?
Well, that and Google on the Android device has been doing voice from the start. But now that there is a device in a fairly large percentage of American homes that's just sitting there waiting for you to ask for something, I use mine to play music more than anything else. Occasionally the weather, sometimes the news, sometimes the traffic, and a good deal of the time NPR.
So it's becoming even more of an on-demand world.
Yes, and on-demand, not just this is what I think I want, but instantaneous. Who won the World Series in 1963 is something I'll never need to remember, because I can just ask my phone or the voice device sitting on the table.
How does Google monetize that in the way that they were able to monetize the traditional web search?
Well, so if I say I need fresh batteries, Amazon's going to send me their own batteries. Right now, I subscribe to body soap. There is a bar of soap that my family, because of skin conditions, has decided this is what we want in the showers. And Amazon has figured out that we go through 6 bars of it every 4.2 months. And it shows up on my doorstep. And for the first 2 years of this, I was able to adjust it. Please deliver it a week sooner or 2 days later. And now we never run out of soap. Okay, so they've monetized products because I can subscribe to them. Well, what if they are listening to the usual things? Don't forget the milk is not going to be something that Amazon's going to think about, but paper towels, sure. I need to get more dish soap. So they've got the dash button that as I'm walking by the washing machine, I can just hit that button and more laundry detergent shows up. But as this becomes more voice activated, we're going to see a marketplace where a marketer selling a product wants to be the product that Amazon ships when somebody mentions something generically. And that's going to be a bidding war, and that's going to be a struggle.
It's interesting because a generation ago, we were talking about Walmart being sort of in control of these types of issues in terms of pricing in the retail sector.
Yeah.
So you mentioned milk. Is that where Whole Foods came in?
Well, for delivery, I'm not so sure. I grew up in a town that had a milkman driving around town and dropping off the milk and the butter and the cheese, but I don't think we're going to get back to that anytime soon. And I'm sure there's some kids in a dorm room somewhere working on a robot cooler where they can put the cheese and the eggs and the milk, and it will just fly to my house, and I will be proven wrong.
So it has to be a drone. I was thinking that as well. How is the Digital Analytics Association, the DAA, responding to all of this rapid change?
By trying to find out what our members are most interested in. So we are on our way to becoming data scientists. The Digital Analytics Association is addressing that by saying, well, this is what an analyst does, and this is what a data scientist does, and here's how they work together, and here are the various skills in between. Which area do you prefer? Where would you like to work? And if you're really interested in the algorithms and you're really interested in the advanced math, hey, there's a PhD waiting for you. But if you're interested in solving business problems, well, then maybe more on the analyst side, working with the data scientist. And then the machine learning is sort of all in the background, because the data scientist is always on the leading edge. The analyst is always both feet deeply in the business. And then the underpinning is what tools and data do we have? So the underpinning is, we've got online data, we've got survey data, we've got voice of customer data, and now we have an algorithm that supports all of that called machine learning. How does the data scientist make that useful for the analyst, who can make the data useful and insightful for the business owner?
And I thought I heard you a couple months ago talking about making these linkages with the marketing departments, the public relations departments, and further diminishing the silos across these areas within organizations.
Yeah, well, that's a perennial problem. That is cultural. That is something that the enterprise has been dealing with since day one. It starts with functional responsibilities. I am responsible for public relations. I am responsible for advertising. I am responsible for direct mail. And I am paid a bonus, and I build my empire, and I have my own metrics to meet. And breaking down those silos to say, if we shifted some more money over to PR, it will help the advertising people. Well, that's just a political battle. And that's a cultural issue that has to be dealt with. The next level of silo is the data itself. PR people are collecting one round of one type of data, and the website's creating a different type of data, and social media is producing a different data set, and we need to bring all of these together. So we need to be politically aligned in order to become data aligned, so that we can finally become technically aligned, and we have an analytics workflow problem to solve.
I was on a Facebook Live this week looking at HubSpot Academy. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they now have a social media certification program that they're offering to our students. Is this kind of the wave of the future for educators and others to basically be able to prove your worth in these areas?
So certification is a way to prove your worth. Having been on the development side of this, and you being in academia, know that it is a complex area. Whether you get a certificate of completion, you watched the whole webinar, or a certificate of achievement, you paid $50 and took the test, or a certification which says that you actually took a very serious test that was proctored with ISO standards, and the organization putting it on really does validate that you are qualified to do that job. I mean, think a medical doctor or operating room nurse, right? All the way up to advanced degrees. And this is a complex area that's confusing to people. So should you go to HubSpot and take a class on social measurement? Of course you should. Does that qualify you to do the job? No. At Digital Analytics Association does the same thing. If you want to come, we've got a whole curated list of links of, you want to learn about A/B split testing? Here are the places to go. And oh, by the way, here's a test you can take and a certificate you can hang in your cubicle wall that says you understand this stuff. Not that you've done it, that you're qualified, that you're experienced, but that you did read the material and you did pass the test. Good on you.
Another organization I've been watching the last, I guess, year or two is the group behind the Social Media Examiner and their annual conference in the winter in San Diego. What's your take on their role in the industry in terms of setting norms?
So I get to admit ignorance. I have not heard of them. Now, that's not an indication of their worth. It just means I don't get out much.
So, but I think it's also an indication of what I run into as well, which is there's so many paths one can take in different directions that it's a pretty chaotic landscape right now.
Yeah, I think we need to think in terms of 4 different areas of knowledge that are required. First of all, to understand marketing, full stop. All of it from the beginning, from John Wanamaker on forward, and the 4 Ps, and how digital has changed everything. What is it? How does it work? What's the psychology behind it? So marketing. Number 2 is the industry that you're in. So are you marketing automobiles? Are you marketing toothpaste? Are you marketing business banking services? That is unique. Each industry is different. The marketing concepts apply across the board, but once you get into a specific industry, no, it's a different world. Number 3 are the tools that are available to do that job in that industry. And the tools are everything from a 4-color web press to create a direct mail piece, to WordPress to create a website, to social media Hootsuite and HubSpot to keep track of everything, and all of the analytics tools. That's a whole lot of tools to know. So within marketing, pick your specialty. Within business, pick your industry. Within the tool set, choose which areas you are most interested in and can become expert at, because you can't know all of them. And then the 4th one is the data. And that is understanding the technology and the statistics. Something that as an English literature major, I would run screaming, arms waving overhead when I was in university, but boy, I wish I had taken a statistics class. Understanding the data helps me use the tools, and the tools are now including machine learning and AI, which will help me advance marketing in my chosen field. And that's just a whole lot of stuff. So you have to slice each individual one, and that combination of, I know a lot about this type of marketing in this industry using these tools because I have a very high confidence in the data that can be collected, makes you a unique talent with a unique skill set that will be of value to a company in that industry. But to just say, go learn all of this stuff, no.
I think there is quite a parallel with the public relations field in the sense that people tend to specialize in one practice out of maybe the half dozen that are the most central to a large firm.
And like anything, it's not just a specific practice, but again, the specific industry. Mm-hmm. Public relations, especially because I am going to get to know who are the top influencers in that industry, whether it's writers for Wall Street Journal or bloggers or YouTube phenoms. And I get to know them, what they're interested in, how to spin a story to get their attention. And then keeping track of my competitors, keeping track of advances in regulations in my industry is what is the value that the human brings to the table. Experience.
You mentioned focusing on specific tools. Are there other tools that I didn't mention that you find most useful right now?
Pass. So Forrester, Gartner, they're the ones who do that for a living. I use a certain set of tools for my specific industry that I find useful, and I am wildly intrigued by all the other tools that are bubbling up, and I simply don't have time to go explore them. I'm the guy that's so busy running down the street he doesn't have time to jump in the car. Email is my friend. I love Hootsuite. I'm good with ExactTarget. But I live in Outlook, and my public face is PowerPoint. That's kind of it for me. My job, which is to promote the Digital Analytics Association and to run the Marketing Evolution Experience Conference, doesn't lend itself to massive amounts of data for which artificial intelligence will be useful. But understanding all of that stuff in order to explain it to others, that is my stock in trade. So PowerPoint is very useful. Email is very useful. Writing blogs, but using me as a metric for are there any good tools out there? No, I'm the wrong guy to ask.
To put another way, if you were me teaching young people getting ready to leave the university and go out into this world, are there, if not tools, some basic skills that they better have to be successful?
Much better question for me to craft an answer for. Number one, a relationship with an understanding of programming. Now, whether that's coding an HTML page or writing some active JavaScript or getting involved with R and Python from a statistics perspective, just any coding at all to understand how humans communicate with computers and what the limitations of the computer really are. That's important. Number two would be the data. What does it mean to have and manipulate information? And if all I'm doing is playing with an Excel spreadsheet, that's great. It gives me enough knowledge to when somebody says database, or somebody says it's in the cloud, or somebody says data integration is a difficult problem, I understand what they mean. so that I can continue having a conversation. Then we can talk about machine learning, which I think for your students is going to be very important. Some of them might become coders. That could happen, but chances are excellent that they won't. But they will become users of code. So understanding how to program is valuable, and understanding machine learning is really important. So I can deal with data from a program perspective, writing a program, or I can deal with it from a machine learning perspective, using an algorithm, and understanding the difference between those is, it's going to take a couple of hours of classroom discussion, and am I really getting through because I understand these concepts, but am I explaining it to somebody who hasn't dealt with them before? That's going to take several hours. Then they can, marketing on top of all of that. But if I understand what's happening inside a computer so that when it breaks, it's not a surprise, when I can understand what's happening in machine learning so I know when one of these is useful over the other one, I don't have to be a data scientist, but I have to be able to work with them. I have to be able to clearly describe to a data scientist the problem I'm trying to solve and the data that I have available, and let them figure out what algorithm will solve my problem best so that I can then interpret the results and make a business decision. Recently on a blog post or a podcast was a conversation about data literacy and what does it mean? So I need to be English language literate so I can read and write. I need to be mathematically literate so I can add and subtract. Do I have to be able to write sonnets? Couldn't hurt. Do I have to understand statistics? Take math all the way out to statistics. Couldn't hurt. Having that kind of literacy for data, what it is, what its limitations are, how it's so often misused, how we completely missed the last presidential election, how surveys are how the results of surveys are misconstrued to satisfy a particular perspective. That's just all called critical thinking. So you have your work cut out for you.
Indeed. So one of the things I'm working on to come to grips with this is a new book, and the framework for it, beyond measurement and management of social media, is this idea of digital entrepreneurship, which I think you've been quite the entrepreneur over the years in terms of advancing these ideas.
It's true. I have not held a steady job for 30 years.
So talk about that. What can students do with that concept? What have you learned from being an entrepreneur?
I've learned that, let's talk about how I came to be one. And the answer is, I never had a boss that showed me how to be a really good boss. I just never worked for anybody whom I wanted to emulate. So I didn't know, when I found myself in a position to have 6 people reporting to me, I was struggling because am I their friend? Am I their parent? Am I their boss? What does it mean? And oh my God, I got to fire one of them. And that was very uncomfortable. But I got started in sales where I was, the harder I work, the more money I make. I earn my commission whether or not my boss's boss likes my boss or not. So I didn't have to worry about politics. I just had to find out what the customer's problem was, figure out how to solve it, make sure it was a fair exchange of value, collect my commission, and move on. But when I tripped over the internet in 1993, I got so excited about it that I wanted to go tell people. So how do I do that? Well, I'll put on a seminar series, which became a conference, and I wrote books, and I do public speaking. But the business side of that was because I was comfortable in sales and solving problems, because I was an English literature major and could write. it was comfortable for me to put myself forward as an expert. Now, the philosophy that I have held on to very tightly is that the more narrow the focus of your expertise, the easier it is to become a known expert, a thought leader. So if I were to be in 1993, I was offering myself up as a marketing consultant. Handful of companies needed some help. I was making a living. That was fine. Then I saw the internet and I wanted to be an internet marketing consultant and nobody knew what I meant. So I had to explain it. In 5 or 10 years, internet marketing strategy consultant meant I couldn't hold a job. So, okay, it was time to narrow my focus. And that's about when the analytics tools were starting to be invented. And I said, oh, wait, it's not just my opinion about what makes a good website. We can measure this stuff. We can prove that this button's better than that button. So got very excited and became a self-proclaimed expert. I wrote a white paper, and then I wrote a book, and then I put on a conference, and the audience created a professional association. This was not by design. But the narrower you can focus, if you are the number one person who is blogging and tweeting and Instagramming about left-handed sewing machine manufacturing in Dallas, then if anybody wants to know about left-handed sewing machine manufacturing Dallas, you're the only one in the world to go to. You're the guy. So if you can pick, of the marketing and the industry and the data and the tools, if you can be the one who is at the intersection of those for your specific industry, you win. You're the number one choice on Google.
Looking back now on where we started with social media measurement, is there anything now that really surprises you about where it's gone?
I am surprised about the leaps forward that we've made with sentiment analysis. Before it was a classic bag of words solution. If they said great, good, happy, it was positive. If they said terrible, bad, yucky, it was negative. And it was just a straight, which words are they using? But because of machine learning and the quantity of outpouring on social media, we have so much data that we can actually tell that when a 14-year-old says this movie is really sick, that's a positive. And when a 50-year-old says it, not so much. And this is helping us a great deal in noticing opinion and sentiment. So that, coupled with natural language processing from, okay, they're happy about it, they're sad about it, but what kind of reply might be the most engaging, the machine is starting to come up with recommendations of, if you want more people to click on whatever link you're going to put, talk about these things or use these phrases. And I guess the final point on that is these machines are not working well by themselves, and humans don't scale. But when you put the two together, we're making great progress.
You sound optimistic, and yet we did have the issues with the way the last presidential election went. Is there anything we should be concerned about? And if so, how do we respond to that?
Yes. Where to begin? First of all, critical thinking. On the one hand, if it's absolutely outrageous, chances are it's not true. It's just there because the machine has been taught to produce things that are outrageous to get a response.
So a dose of media literacy might be good.
Exactly. Critical thinking. If it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. So same thing. Critical thinking, media literacy, that's important. So that's part one. It's machines that are rewarded for clicks will show you the most outrageous thing just to get a click. And that's not helping anybody. That's part one. Part two is bad actors. people who are using the systems and the tools and human psychology to bend you to their will, whether you know it or not. Now, if somebody says, buy this product now, it's the best one on the market, it's discounted 50%, instead of $1,000, it's only $500, but there's only 3 left. It's just pushing all your buttons. You don't need a pen for $500. I'm sorry. But if you understand the psychology behind it, okay, fine, you can protect yourself. But if it is public outrage over some policy thing that's happening, separating immigrant children from their parents is a worthy thing to be outraged about. But the 59 other things that were thrown in your face that day are kind of made up to just try to get a response. And understanding the difference is the critical thinking, media literacy importance. The other piece that we need to be very careful of, especially when it comes to machine learning, is the bias that's embedded in data already. The best example, easiest one to understand, is if I'm working for a large enterprise and I'm trying to I need to hire 100 people this month for that department. So I get in 10,000 resumes. I can't read them all. So I have the machine read them, and the machine says, here's the prediction for the people who are the most likely to succeed in your company based on other people who've already succeeded in your company. Well, how would it know that? Because I gave them data about my employees, and it said, oh, well, what constitutes success? Number of increases in pay, number of increases in rank, number of direct reports, number of positive reviews. And it's going to look at thousands and thousands of resumes and the experience of the company and say, everybody who is not a white male, don't even consider them. They're not successful at your company. That is built-in bias. It's in the data. 10 years, 15 years of data says white males have succeeded. That's not what we want, but it's true. I can figure out your race even without knowing anything about you except your zip code, your credit score, the last 4 locations and times you were based on where your phone was. I can deduce your race from that. That is built-in bias, and we have to be very, very careful to guard against that, so that when we're selling insurance, when we're approving bank loans, when we are choosing people to join our company, that we're doing it with eyes open and not just trusting the data blindly.
And it always seems to me, I don't want to keep you much longer, but it always seems to me that the regulators, the courts, the protections that are supposed to be built in are always way behind the technological change.
That is by design. My wife is in the legal field, and the phrase that is used there most often is that the law grinds very slowly but very finely. So we don't want to make snap judgments about this stuff. You can't outlaw cars because you might have an accident. Let's legislate airbags and seatbelts. Fine. Same thing with using this data. We need to be careful. We need to have regulations about it. We need to monitor it carefully. And yeah, it gets ahead of us. And the latest presidential election is a fine example of how it got ahead of us.
In our last minute or so, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would have asked and said, hey, here's something you need to know?
What you need to know is how the human machine combination, the collaboration comes together. What is it that the human brings to the table? And it is humanity. The machine is really good at math. It can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. It can take 1 billion people and chop them up into hundreds of different classifications and categories. It's really good at that, but it's not good at why it should do that. It cannot choose what data it considers. The human has to. It cannot choose what problem to solve. The human has to. And it cannot tell you whether the result it comes up with is compassionate, empathetic, valuable, or even reasonable. That's for the human to look at. That's the smell test. We put all the data in. The machine said, here is the result. The human goes, yeah, no, we gotta change the inputs. We gotta change the question because it's giving us bad advice. The machine can't know that. So being human, being able to see things from multiple perspectives, taking information from one area of your life and applying it to another, thinking in terms of analogies. This is what the human brings to the table. So the machine can do all the number crunching, and together we become a very powerful combination.